When Maino decided to publicly back Max B, it sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community. This wasn't just a casual shout-out or a passing comment online. It was a statement, and in hip-hop, statements like this carry weight. Choosing a side in any ongoing situation is more than just a personal opinion, it's positioning. Maino's move put direct pressure on Jim Jones, reopening wounds that many thought had faded with time. The energy in the streets shifted immediately because backing Max B is never neutral. Max B's story has always carried emotional weight in the culture. It is filled with loyalty, unfinished business, and deep-rooted memories. When Maino spoke, it wasn't casual commentary. It was a deliberate act of alignment, showing where his loyalty lies. Maino has always been known for his sense of loyalty. He doesn't speak lightly on matters that involve his friends or those he respects. When he expressed support for Max B, it wasn't about gaining followers or creating hype. It was about taking a stand, making it clear that he recognizes the struggles, the history, and the pain associated with Max B's story. His words were precise and intentional. He didn't dance around the subject. He didn't try to soften his stance or stay neutral. He made it clear who he was supporting, and in hip-hop, clarity like that is dangerous because it forces responses. It doesn't allow for ambiguity, and everyone in the culture instantly understood the message. Jim Jones, of course, felt the pressure immediately. Max B and Dipset's histories are deeply intertwined. There are alliances, rivalries, and decisions from years ago that still matter today. By backing Max B publicly, Maino wasn't just showing support for a person, he was shining a light on unresolved issues and challenging the accepted narrative. In the streets, this kind of alignment is more powerful than any diss track or online post. It's about principle and loyalty, and that's why Maino's words hit so hard. Fans reacted quickly, replaying old clips, sharing interviews, and revisiting past stories to understand the full context. What made Maino's support stand out even more was his timing. He didn't react impulsively. He didn't speak during peak drama or chaos. Instead, he chose the moment carefully when the conversation could land the hardest. Timing in hip-hop matters. A statement made at the wrong time can be forgotten, but a statement made at the right time can shift the culture. By choosing this particular moment to speak up, Maino demonstrated not only loyalty, but also strategic awareness. People noticed immediately. This wasn't a random endorsement. It was a move that carried intention, weight, and consequences. The streets respect intention more than noise. Anyone can make loud statements, post videos, or create drama online. But when someone speaks from a place of principle, it resonates deeper. Maino's approach was calm, measured, and firm. He wasn't angry. He wasn't trying to create chaos. He was making a statement of loyalty, showing that he values memory, principle, and alignment over convenience. That's why the reaction was so immediate and intense. Fans understood that this wasn't just about Max B as an artist. It was about the history, the culture, and the respect that comes with taking a stand. Backing Max B carries a very specific meaning in hip-hop. It's not about supporting legal matters or attempting to change past events. It's about acknowledging unfinished stories, loyalty, and moral alignment. Maino's stance sent a clear message to Jim Jones and the wider hip-hop community. It reminded everyone that unresolved history doesn't just disappear, it stays alive. And when someone credible like Maino chooses to bring it back into the conversation, it forces reflection, debate, and sometimes tension. Jim Jones's connection to Max B's past meant that he couldn't ignore this move. The moment Maino spoke, the culture recognized the shift instantly. One of the most important things about this moment is that Maino didn't throw insults or create unnecessary drama. He spoke from conviction, without attacking anyone directly. That made his message even more powerful. Conviction travels farther than anger in hip-hop culture. Fans saw that this wasn't about clout or chasing views. This was about being aligned with principle and loyalty. The reaction from the streets confirmed this. People didn't beef starting. They saw a moral stance being taken. This distinction matters because it shows that even in a world full of noise and social media chatter, clarity and intention still carry weight. Jim Jones, on the other hand, faced pressure he couldn't ignore. Even if he wanted to move on from the past, the culture doesn't easily forget. By choosing to publicly support Max B, Maino reopened chapters that some believed were closed. In hip-hop, unresolved history follows you, no matter how much time passes. Careers can evolve, alliances can shift, but certain actions and decisions remain relevant. Maino's move reminded the streets of this reality. It also highlighted how public alignment has changed over the years. Back in the day, discussions like this stayed private. Now, everything plays out in public. Social media amplifies every statement, every post, and every endorsement. Silence in this era is often interpreted as agreement or guilt. By choosing to speak, Maino forced responses, reactions, and reflection. The intensity of the moment wasn't loud or explosive in the traditional sense. There were no disses, no battles, no fights. Instead, it was subtle but heavy. The streets felt the tension and understood the message. Maino's stance acted like a mirror, reflecting back on past decisions, past loyalties, and the responsibilities that come with history. In many ways, this moment was bigger than headlines or viral clips. It was about principle, timing, and the culture's understanding of loyalty. By aligning publicly with Max B, Maino reminded everyone that hip-hop remembers its history. Memory matters more than convenience, and principle outweighs momentary comfort. Another crucial aspect is how Maino handled the conversation around personal relationships. He made it clear that supporting Max B didn't mean disrespecting others he had personal connections with. He acknowledged the complexity of relationships in the culture, showing that loyalty can be nuanced. You can respect someone while taking a stand on principle. This honesty and clarity resonated with fans, because in hip-hop, ambiguity often breeds speculation. Maino removed ambiguity completely. His stance was clear. There was no room for misinterpretation. The ripple effect of Maino's endorsement was immediate. Social media buzzed with analysis, debates, and discussions. Fans revisited old narratives, re-examined decisions made years ago, and questioned what alignment really meant. Maino's move disrupted the comfort that had settled over certain stories. It reminded everyone that silence doesn't always protect narratives. Sometimes silence protects revision, allowing inconvenient truths to fade. Maino refused to let that happen. By choosing clarity, he forced a re-examination of the past and a recognition that unresolved history matters. This situation also highlights how hip-hop loyalty operates differently from mainstream perceptions. Loyalty isn't about trends or popularity. It's about principle, memory, and accountability. Supporting Max B publicly wasn't a move for exposure or clout. It was a statement of alignment, of respect, and of courage. Maino accepted the risks that came with it, knowing that some backlash might follow. He understood that speaking out could strain relationships, invite criticism, and reignite old disputes. But he also understood that doing nothing would compromise his values and his stance on loyalty. Hip-hop is a culture built on memory. The streets remember what happened, who said what, and forced fans, artists, and the culture at large to revisit old chapters and confront unresolved issues. It wasn't just about individual players, it was about the system of accountability that hip-hop maintains, where choices are remembered and principle matters. Maino's move disrupted a narrative that had been softened over time. It challenged the assumption that history can be left alone once years have passed. By the time the dust settled, it was clear that Maino's support had shifted the entire conversation. There were no shouting matches, no public feuds, no viral diss tracks, yet the tension lingered. The culture understood that this wasn't a temporary moment, it was a lasting shift. Maino's alignment with Max B wasn't just an opinion, it was a statement that loyalty, principle, and memory still hold power in hip-hop. This moment reminded everyone that in a world full of noise, calm clarity carries more weight than anger or theatrics. Maino didn't ask for agreement, he didn't seek approval, he simply stated where he stood, and that alone forced reflection. Hip-hop is full of moments where silence is interpreted as agreement. By refusing to remain silent, Maino disrupted that process. He reminded the streets that unresolved history matters, that principle matters, that loyalty over convenience is more powerful than fleeting clout. His stance created pressure for Jim Jones and anyone connected to the story, showing that the culture doesn't easily forget. Even if Jim Jones wanted to move on, the moment had already landed. Maino's endorsement forced reflection, debate, and consideration of past actions. The streets understood that history doesn't fade quietly. It can resurface at any moment, and those who try to outrun it will face pressure. Maino's move highlighted that principle and alignment are valued more than momentary popularity. His calm, firm stance communicated that loyalty and conviction have real weight. This was a lesson not just for Jim Jones, but for the entire culture. The situation also demonstrates how modern hip-hop accountability works. Public statements now have consequences beyond personal relationships. Social media ensures that every action, endorsement, or alignment is scrutinized, debated, and analyzed. Maino understood this and accepted it. His decision to back Max B wasn't impulsive, it was intentional, calculated, and principled. By choosing to speak up, he reminded everyone that clarity is powerful, that loyalty can't be ignored, and that unresolved history continues to matter. Fans responded immediately, recognizing the courage it took to speak out. Maino's calm, clear stance made the moment stand out. It wasn't about drama or personal attack. It was about principle. It reminded everyone that the streets respect intention and clarity over noise and theatrics. By taking this step, Maino showed that hip-hop history is alive and that unresolved stories can't simply be left alone. This moment will be remembered not because of insults, feuds, or viral clips, but because of what it represented. Loyalty being tested publicly, memory being activated, and history being challenged instead of quietly accepted. Maino didn't just pick a side, he made a statement about principle, timing, and alignment. He reminded the culture that silence doesn't always protect truth, and that standing firm on principle carries more weight than any temporary controversy. By the end of this, the streets understood one clear lesson. Loyalty matters more than convenience, memory matters more than forgetting, and clarity matters more than noise. Maino's public support for Max B wasn't just another moment in hip-hop. It was a statement about culture, history, and principle. It showed that even in a world driven by social media, clout, and trends, calm, firm alignment can disrupt narratives, reopen histories, and force reflection. Maino's move will continue to resonate for years because it touched on core values in hip-hop. It reminded the streets that history isn't just something to observe, it's something to honor, challenge, and revisit when necessary. Choosing a side, speaking up, and standing firm are actions that carry real consequences. Maino accepted those consequences and showed that loyalty, memory, and principle are forces stronger than any temporary headline. To fully understand why Maino's support for Max B caused such a stir, it's important to look back at the history. Max B, also known as Charlie Wingate, has always been a figure of fascination in hip-hop. His music, his style, and his story have resonated deeply with fans, but his journey has also been marked by controversy and unfinished business. Max B wasn't just another rapper, he represented a part of hip-hop culture that valued creativity, loyalty, and authenticity. His situation became a symbol for many, representing both talent interrupted and justice delayed. When Maino stepped forward to publicly back him, it wasn't merely about supporting an artist, it was about acknowledging the deeper, ongoing narrative of loyalty and accountability that Max B embodies. Dipset, the group closely associated with both Jim Jones and Max B, has a long, complex history filled with alliances, conflicts, and power struggles. Over the years, Dipset became more than a music collective. It became a symbol of street credibility, loyalty, and influence in hip-hop. Every move made by its members carried weight. A public endorsement, like Maino giving support to Max B, sent immediate signals to everyone in the community. It forced people to revisit past events, reevaluate loyalties, and consider how history had unfolded. Jim Jones, as a central figure in Dipset, was directly implicated simply because of the historical connection. The moment Maino spoke, it reminded the streets that unresolved history in hip-hop doesn't fade, it lingers, and anyone connected to that history can be called back into the conversation at any moment. Fans quickly picked up on the significance of Maino's words. Social media exploded with debates, reactions, and analyses. Clips of past interviews, diss tracks, and public statements resurfaced almost immediately. People began comparing narratives, revisiting old videos, and questioning what had been left unsaid in the past. The streets, as ever, interpreted every detail. For fans, backing Max B wasn't just a casual act of support. It was a deliberate alignment with principle, loyalty, and history. Maino's decision highlighted how memory works in hip-hop. The culture never forgets. It holds on to actions, words, and decisions, and it responds when someone chooses to shine a light back on the past. The timing of Maino's support also amplified the impact. Maino didn't react randomly or out of emotion. He chose the right moment, a moment when the history and timing could create maximum impact. Timing in hip-hop matters because it can amplify a statement from a simple message to a cultural shift. By speaking when he did, Maino ensured that his stance wouldn't be overlooked or minimized. It wasn't just a comment, it was a calculated move that demanded attention, reflection, and conversation. The culture respects that level of intentionality. Fans and peers alike recognized the significance. This wasn't noise, it was deliberate, meaningful, and consequential. An important part of this story is how Maino balanced clarity with respect. Supporting Max B publicly didn't mean disrespecting anyone else. He made it clear that his loyalty to Max B existed alongside other personal relationships. He acknowledged the complexity of alliances in hip-hop, showing that principle can coexist with respect. That nuance is often lost in social media discussions, but the streets noticed it. Maino's careful approach reinforced that backing someone publicly doesn't have to be about attacking others. It can be about stating a position, showing integrity, and aligning with history in a transparent way. Fans appreciated the honesty because in a world of gossip, speculation, and rumor, clarity stands out. As the conversation continued to unfold, the ripple effects of Maino's support became even more evident. Jim Jones didn't respond immediately with anger or public statements. Instead, the streets felt the pressure. By reopening unresolved chapters of history, Maino created a subtle yet powerful shift. Fans began connecting dots, reviewing past interactions, and reconsidering the context of previous events. Even people outside the immediate circle started noticing. Maino's stance served as a reminder that hip-hop is more than music. It's a living, breathing culture with rules, principles, and memory that demand attention. History in hip-hop is never buried forever. It resurfaces when someone with credibility decides to bring it back into the light. Maino's calm, measured approach contrasted sharply with the way some conflicts escalate in the culture. Many might assume that taking sides like this would spark immediate arguments, disses, or confrontations, but that wasn't the case. Maino chose to remain controlled and precise. That made his support even more impactful. Conviction, especially when calmly delivered, travels farther than loud insults or angry outbursts. Fans understood that this wasn't about drama, it was about principle. It was about loyalty over convenience, memory over revision, and standing firm when it matters most. That lesson resonated across the culture and amplified the influence of his words. At the heart of this moment is a lesson about loyalty. Hip-hop values loyalty above almost anything else. Supporting someone like Max B publicly is not a trivial act. It demonstrates courage, integrity, and awareness of the culture's unspoken rules. Maino's decision highlighted how loyalty operates differently from mainstream expectations. It isn't transactional. It isn't about gaining views, followers, or attention. It's about aligning with principle and showing that unresolved stories and commitments still carry weight. Fans immediately recognized the significance of this alignment. They understood that Maino's endorsement wasn't fleeting, it was deliberate and lasting. Another critical aspect is how Maino's support challenges the accepted narratives. Over time, stories in hip-hop can be softened, rewritten, or forgotten. Silence often allows certain versions of events to become accepted as truth. By publicly endorsing Max B, Maino disrupted that process. He challenged comfortable revisions of history and forced the culture to re-engage with the original context. That disruption isn't negative, it's necessary in a culture that values memory, accountability, and principle. Maino's stance reminded everyone that history is alive and it can be reopened whenever someone with credibility decides to bring it back into the light. The cultural implications of this moment extend beyond individual relationships. Maino's decision to back Max B publicly demonstrated how social media has changed the way hip-hop handles loyalty, principle, and history. Statements that were once private are now public, and silence is no longer neutral. In today's culture, silence is interpreted as agreement or complicity. By refusing to remain silent, Maino forced the culture to confront the unresolved chapters, rethink their narratives, and recognize the significance of alignment with principle. This was not about clout chasing, it was about honesty, accountability, and clarity. Fans also recognized the strategic aspect of Maino's timing, speaking at a moment when the culture was already questioning credibility, consistency, and alignment amplified the effect. Maino's calm and deliberate stance created a shift in conversation that no amount of noise could replicate. Angry outbursts might fade, but calm conviction persists. That's why this moment will be remembered. Maino's alignment with Max B created ripples across the streets, social media, and the broader hip-hop community. It wasn't just a moment, it was a cultural statement. The reaction from the community was immediate. Old interviews resurfaced. Fans began reanalyzing past actions, lyrics, and interactions. Every post, clip, and reference to Max B gained new significance. Maino's decision became a focal point for conversations about principle, loyalty, and memory. The culture quickly recognized that this wasn't about entertainment. It was about values. It was about standing firm, showing integrity, and demonstrating that unresolved history matters. Maino's clarity forced reflection across the community, reminding everyone that actions have long-term consequences. As Maino's words spread, the streets immediately reacted. Social media platforms lit up with fans analyzing every word, replaying every clip, and debating the meaning behind his endorsement of Max B. This was not a simple topic. It touched on deep-rooted histories.